Welcome. My name is Fred Sandoval. I'm the Executive Director for the National Latino Behavioral Health Association, NALBA for short. Thank you for joining us today for our Plática called Tenemos Voz, We Have a Voice, on Latino peer recovery. With me today is our esteemed Associate Director and co-host, Maxine Henry, who will introduce herself shortly. NALBA is a nonprofit agency dedicated to the well-being of Latino individuals, families, and communities in New Mexico and across the United States. Our mission is to address the disparities and barriers affecting the behavioral health of Latinos. Today, we're excited to bring to you this Plática series called Tenemos Voz on Latino peer recovery and the journey of hope and transformation. We'd like to thank the New Mexico Human Services Department and the Office of Peer Recovery and Engagement for making this series possible. Each month through June 2021, NALBA will host speakers directly involved in recovery to share their story, insights, and the resources available to help recovery possible for others. So let's begin with our co-host, Miss Maxine Henry, who will introduce herself and our guests. So Maxine, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Fred, for that warm welcome. As Mr. Sandoval stated, I am Maxine Henry, Associate Director for the National Latino Behavioral Health Association. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. Originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, but have been in the, well, now really cold Denver metro area for about 5 years. So let's get started. Let's introduce you to our two colleagues, two of our favorite people. First, we have Eric Pacheco. He has been sober since November 15th, 2005. Congratulations. He was diagnosed with PTSD and polysubstance abuse in 2006. Mr. Pacheco had the pleasure of working with NALBA Tenemos Voz in 2009. He has accomplished many goals during his recovery. He has obtained 2 associate's degrees in 2010, a bachelor's degree in 2012, and a master's degree in 2016. Eric is currently a licensed therapist and the owner of a thriving mental health facility called A New Awakening Rio Rancho, which is doing business by the name of Recycled Men, LLC. They are fortunate to serve around 500 clients at this time and are looking to expand. Eric has had many lived experiences that many people do not recover from. He considers himself a blessed individual. Welcome, Eric. And then we have the esteemed Dr. Rocky Romero. He is the CEO and owner of JR Romero Associates, a training and consulting company he started almost 21 years ago that focuses on behavioral health program evaluation, consultation, and specialized training. In addition, Dr. Romero is a former assistant professor for the New Mexico Highlands University School of Social Work in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He served as the co-chair for Governor Richardson's New Mexico Higher Education Cultural Competency Task-Force. He has also served as an executive council member for the New Mexico Consortium for Behavioral Health Training and Research, to include many other boards and committees. In addition, Dr. Romero completed his doctoral studies at the University of New Mexico in Language, Literacy, and Socio-Cultural Studies, with the focus on analyzing legal disclosure related to New Mexico colonization, applying a critical race theory lens. Rocky has been a trainer and consultant for the National Hispanic and Latino Mental Health Technology Transfer Center for the last 11 years. In addition, he is a national trainer for Clare Matrix, formerly the Matrix Institute, for the last 13 years. He is focused on teaching culturally appropriate treatment approaches while reducing health disparities for people of color and providing clinical supervision in rural communities. Lastly, Rocky continues to research and present nationally on the intersections of racism, discrimination, the impact of racialized legal discourse, and the impact of the social determinants of health on people of color. Fred, I don't know how you could have picked 2 more amazing gentlemen to be our guests today. Really excited about this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxine. And always great to have you with us in this co-hosting of Tenemos Voz. It's always great to have you, really bring your perspective to bear on the questions and the exchange that we're having today. So let's get started. I think folks are waiting to get to listen to our esteemed speakers. And let me just start this way. I want you to know how today's plática will work. We'll start this plática, that's the Spanish word for conversation, just like that. It's a conversation between ourselves, the co-hosts, as well as our invited guests to talk about peers, Latinos, and Latinos in recovery. So you can see it's pretty broad, but it also covers recovery in general too, because anyone and everyone who's affected by addictions or mental health issues is aspiring to recovery, I can assure you. And so we're going to get to hear a little bit about those stories today. So we'll start with a series of questions just to get us started, but we're also going to be turning to the Facebook Live audience who will be sending in questions, sharing comments, and I can already see that we have some folks who are already logging on, watching, and so we're excited to say hello to them. We'll give them shout outs as we go along. And as we do that, we'll direct questions to our speakers when they come up on the screen. So let's get started. And the first question that we have is the same question for each of you. And so I'll start with Dr. Romero, who also likes to be referred to and called by Rocky. So Rocky, we're going to keep it informal, and just as we would in a plática, we would be calling each other by our first names or our nicknames, right? But in this case, I want to say, Rocky, thank you for joining us today. As always, it's great to always work with you and interact with you. And so I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey and the road to recovery. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
thank you,
Rocky.
Fred. Thank you, Fred, so much. And Maxine, and I'm honored to share some space with Eric as well today. I feel very lucky and humbled to be here. And, you know, I joke every once in a while when I'm introducing myself to folks that, you know, any birthday past 35 where I come from, Española, New Mexico, is a blessed day, given some of the history that we've experienced, you know, in our community. So my journey through recovery comes through my own experience and of recovery, but also through familial generational recovery, right? And seeing family members also experiencing bouts of addiction. And I hope I can share some of that today with you all. I'm humbled to be here. And really, I think, like I've said before, if I can make it and get on the other side of addiction, I think that many folks can, and we're here to support you in that. And I hope that I can kind of share some of those resources with you all today as well. So thank you, Fred, for that first question. I appreciate it.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I think, when you think about your life experiences and especially as it relates to the Espanola Valley, right? Um, I grew up in Santa Fe, but as a teenager, my family moved to a little village called Avicu. So they used to bus us into Espanola High School. That's when they were called the Hornets. So I wouldn't expect you to remember the Hornets because I think you were probably a
Go
Sun Devil.
Hornets.
Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's right. Each one of us has a story, right? When you get to hearing what that person's story is, and today is really, in large measure, a little bit about storytelling. So I'm going to ask the same question of my colleague, my compadre Eric Pacheco, and I was so glad he mentioned that. Gosh, it's now looking back almost a dozen years when he and I got to partner up on this very project called Tenemos Voz. We have a voice, and he helped really start to bring attention nationally to what do Latinos peer have to say about their experiences, their recovery, and really trying to make changes in their life, making new choices. And all I can say, the choices and the experiences that Eric had before recovery and during recovery and to the present have been a phenomenal story. So, Eric, tell us a little bit more about yourself and really about your journey and this recovery. It's been phenomenal. We've been watching you from afar to support you and to just say, now there's someone I greatly admire, and I know you have lots to say about this. So go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, my name's Eric Pacheco. Yeah, it's been a long road to recovery. A lot of penitentiary time due to substance abuse issues, a lot of trauma in my history, survivor of sexual abuse. And Fred knows I don't cut no corners, especially since 2009 when I got up there in Universal City and spoke and just told the truth. I think that's what we do best as Latinos, is we're not scared to voice our opinion, even if it hurts. Uh, if it hurts feelings, I think it's even better because it shows that we care and we take in that cultural aspect. I got a saying around my office that if you have a booger in your nose and I don't tell you, don't call me your friend because I'm letting you walk around looking like a fool, you know. And so that's sort of our motto at the office, man. We call people
Yeah.
and tell people stuff. Don't check your nose, Rocky. but we do, man. I mean, it's that love, and it's that way we're giving love, man. And the road to recovery is changing now, and it's a little bit scary. It's easier in the beginning when everything's brand new and you haven't been part of society, and you're meeting new people, and you have people's confidence, like probation officers or what have yous, and judges are commending you on stuff. It feels pretty good. The longer you stay in recovery, it seems a little bit harder it gets if you veer away from that path and stuff. And so my road to recovery, man, has been a lot of 12-step support in the community, a lot of consumerism of mental health services, which I'm still involved in, weekly sessions. To It's been on and off, and every once in a while I got to go back and get tuned up. I try not to be scared of it. I try to be as open and honest as I can, and my daughter's 13, going to be 14 years old, man, and she's never seen me drunk or high a day in my life. She's seen some of the other mental health stuff come out, anger, irritation, and it continues to this day. I mean, last night I'm in Phoenix. There's something happened with some individuals that were guarding the fence that we didn't know they were there. And the way they talk to me, I try to tell them nicely, I don't appreciate you talking to me like that. And they try, and then it's like they were acting like police, and I get scared of the police because I've been beat up so many times by police. And not that police are bad, but just that intimidating, way they talk to you. And so I had a little episode last night, and I didn't go irate and stuff, so that feels good. My recovery's still intact, emotionally disturbed, called to complain, and asked for a written apology. Don't know if I'll get it, but it is what it is. It's good to be here. Thanks.
Awesome, Eric. It's great to see you. And yeah, I tell you what, man, I love your quote. Tell the truth, right? Powerful, man. Just so powerful. And both you guys are truth tellers, right? And that's what's so cool is you tell it like it is, but it's the truth. The truth is that statement of what our perception of what we're trying to do that helps us deal with our daily experiences in recovery. I'm going to do a little quick shout out, and then we're going to ask Maxine to go on to the next question. And I want to say thank you to Bonifacio for he's been attending these Pláticas consistently. Bonifacio, thank you for joining us. Militia from the Office of Peer Recovery and Engagement, and her and Nathan are joining us today. We also have Cristina Montoya, who sends out a shout out. Good afternoon. Mercedes Martinez from the great state of Illinois is joining us today. Valerie from down in the here in the north central part of the state is with us today. And as folks come in with their questions, Maxine will just make sure we pull some of those comments and questions out. So Maxine, go ahead.
Absolutely, yeah. The response so far from the audience has been so overwhelmingly thankful and positive. So it's not just Fred and I who are extremely honored to have you here today. It's also our listening audience. So I'll start with you, Rocky. Thank you for sharing about your recovery story, not only your personal one, but just where you come from in Española, and then also some of the experiences that you've had with family, right? Those vicarious experiences. Can you talk to us a little bit about what has been the most important factors that have contributed to your recovery?
Absolutely. Thanks, Maxine. And Eric, great piece of advice. I'm gonna remember that one for sure. I think it's three things for me, and I think in addition to that, these are also three ways I think that others that I've worked directly with in recovery have reported to me that they've experienced. In one is cariño or love and caring. Two is fe or faith and spirituality, and really being able um, to be able to be vulnerable and really open yourself up to that. And then the third one is amor, which I think is more with kind of the querencia piece of things, right? From a community-based love approach. And I think those are the things that I really saw in my own recovery after a car accident in '99, dealing with addiction to prescription drugs and having to go through that, that detox piece. My wife and my family never left my side. And I think, the experiences I had growing up with trauma and violence and seeing a lot of poverty, I think really put me in a position where I had those three pieces of support in my own recovery, to where I almost feel like it's an obligation for me to give that back in some way. And given that I am very privileged to have gone on for higher ed and completed doctoral studies and so forth, I always feel that if I don't give back, or I don't stay connected here where I grew up and where I was raised, to that faith and cariño and querida and querencia, I think something would be missing for me personally. So those are some of the things that have kept me really, I think, connected, but also vulnerable and forgiving of myself at times. And I think working through those issues and now seeing family members in their own recovery is a real powerful thing to see. And I try to just provide those three elements that I mentioned in my own supportive family members now. And it's always a slippery slope. I'm sure, Eric can attest to, when you're a provider in the community, yet you're also experiencing some of the addiction qualities or mental health within your own family. You at times feel helpless, but I will say, with colleagues such as yourself and Eric and others out there that I continue to be able to reach out to, it really is, I think, an extension of that querencia and community love that is still so strong in New Mexico, given we still have some of our issues to work through. But I think we have a really good support system if we look closely.
Wow, thank you for what a beautiful recipe. Cariño, fe, and querida, right? And I love how you talked about that reciprocity, that you're obligated, but not in a burdensome way. It's the way that we're raised, right? Like, we do things for each other, because Latinos, we tend to be such a collective community that we're taught by our abuelitas, we're taught by our tias and our hermanos to give back to our community. And we want to do it because we understand and we appreciate and acknowledge what they have done for us. So what a beautiful recipe. And I'm sure a lot of folks can, relate to that. So thank you for sharing that. So Eric, I want to ask you the same question. And the fact that you shared that even last night, even after a dozen years of recovery, that you were tested less than 24 hours ago. And so something is contributing to your ability to do this for more than a dozen years, right? No matter how hard it is. So what has been some of the biggest contributing factors to help you maintain your recovery?
Well, I wish I'd have went first, because now I feel like I'm following Rocky's recipe, bro.
Hey, we'll share it, brother. We'll share it.
Hey, caldo works for a reason, okay?
Hey, yeah, God is great, man. God is great. And well, I want to share a little bit more of my experience with this question, because it's weird to me. I grew up, I went to 11 different schools in 8 years, in my first 8 years of school, in 4 different states. So I witnessed a lot of racism and stuff, you know, being around, being the only Hispanic in a school and stuff like that. I, you know, one of the words that Rocky said is vulnerability. I think that's the number one thing is being vulnerable, man. You know, today I mentioned my sexual abuse. That's one thing I always mention because I think that's why I'm sober, is to get that out because it's not talked about, right? It's shunned upon. I think that my open mindedness that my mother gave me when I was called a spick for the first time, I was about 7 or 8 years old. I came home crying because everybody's laughing because I was the spick boy. And I don't know why God put it in my mom's mind. Because if she would have said something negative, nasty, made me go fight, I probably would be still in the penitentiary if I'd be alive. And what my mom said is, you're a speakito, it's all right. And those simple words to this day is this, I just embraced it for what it was, not knowing what it was, not knowing it was derogatory. And I think it's that open-mindedness, right, that's helped me in my recovery. Just like last night, I had a problem with one of the individuals. I told the other individual, I'm not talking to you, but this guy right here, he can't talk to me like that. And learning that assertiveness instead of aggressive, you know, instead of and slowing down my role a little bit. And maybe that's due to age, but I don't think so because I still got the same mind. I still got the same memories. I still got all of that. But being vulnerable, I think, is my number one trait. And this will go on to the next question, right? Is teaching vulnerability. It's all right that we're survivors. Everybody's a survivor. There ain't nobody different on this planet. I tell people all the time there's 7 billion people on the planet, 5 primary emotions. So we're not as different as everybody wants to make us out to be. You know, this is one of the platforms that I believe that I'm good at, is talking this stuff right now. I'm getting the goosebumps. This is what I'm built to do. I ain't built to smoke crack, do armed robberies, hurt my mama's heart. When it comes to family, though, I tell you what, man, a lot of the sexual abuse happened within the family, and I still sit with some perpetrators, Thanksgiving dinners, Easter dinners, birthday parties, and that's God's grace that I don't run away from that, you know. And it's hard, and but God gives me the strength, right? Like I faced it. It's already over. What can I do? And it's not saying it didn't do anything because I'm finding out in therapy it's ruined my whole relationship life because I've never had a real relationship with a female, even though I got 4 children by 4 different women. And I'm seeing the how it played out, but to have animosity or hate, that's never done nothing but had me back in a dope pipe or hurting people or prison. So what keeps me going is doing what I've always done. You know, I hear Rocky's voice and I'm wondering why I'm still doing what I've always done. I mean, I'm blessed to be here with Nalba again, speaking about stuff. La Placita Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico, run by Albino Garcia. Man, we are doing stuff with the Carney Foundation right now, looking at juvenile justice. I'm a part of that. I'm the only I'm not a non-for-profit agency. I'm the only for-profit agency that was invited into that to give my words, to give the insight, to get the open-mindedness, because we can't go in, you know, revenge and hatred and that. We can't heal with that. That doesn't heal us. That harms us more. And I think forgiveness is one of the biggest. And I'm about to cry because I don't know how I got the capacity to forgive them people, but I don't, right? I probably don't forgive him, but he does, and that's what works for me. I'm gonna pass.
Thank you, Eric. And I think what was so beautiful about what you said is you said the exact opposite of what people would, I think, normally assume would be such an important factor. Is I think especially for young men, we teach them to have this, to be an M&M, to be this like really tough exterior, but the power and vulnerability is mighty. Vulnerability doesn't equal weakness. It equals this capacity to acknowledge what happens to us, what happens because of us, what happens with us, about us, and to be able to, kind of face those and understand that we're not all perfect. So your vulnerability today has actually opened the doors for a lot of our audience members who are just saying thank you, and it resonates with them. And they're saying, it's a blessing to hear that you've gone through similar things that they've gone through or that their family members have gone through. So thank you for being vulnerable and for having the strong faith that you do to not always know the answers. So thank you. Fred, I'll pass it on to you for the next question.
Yeah, thank you, Maxine. Yeah, I was as you were listening carefully to Eric and Rocky's responses to the questions. It gave me a chance to look at some of the comments that were made on the Facebook Live, and I just want to share a couple of them really quickly, if I can, Eric. So Mercedes says, "Congratulations, Eric," and she puts exclamation marks right after that. And she said something that really we can all resonate to. She shared about her own situation and made reference to her brother who was a veteran and was addicted to alcohol and lost his life way too soon at the age of 55. And when she said that, I instantly could recognize a loss or a death in my own life experience. My oldest brother who died from alcoholism, he was like my second father, right? And so what you all have talked about is, despite all these challenges and experiences that we've had that were hostile, negative, violent, abusive, traumatic, then in all of that, the two of you talked about, the healing process, right? What it is about your own healing experience. When Rocky makes reference to the recipe, right? The recipe of healing, right, that he experienced that was important for him. He said, cariño, fe, y amor, right? And then Eric added to it forgiveness, right? So it's an example of, here we are making pozole together, right? We're all just adding a little bit of something of our own, but that's the point, is each of us are making contributions to our own healing. So gentlemen, just such great honor to have you be so truthful and truth telling in this experience, because folks that are listening in are very grateful for your sharing these points and experiences. So here's a question for you. I'll start with Eric on this next question. So how do you encourage peers to help them start making new and different choices that'll help them promote their recovery? You're in the helping business, the healing business, but then you're really having to really use your instruments of change and influence to help individuals start thinking about their own changes and recovery. So what are the things you do to encourage peers to do that?
uh, well, this is a tough question, right? Because I'm on both sides of the fence. I'm actually a mental health provider and I'm a peer. So the lines get blurry a little bit with the people that come in my office. And when we talk about cultural competency,
Mm,
I try to let them know in New Mexico we're a different breed, bro. The laughing, the joking, it's all part of therapy, man. And so what I try to do is I get them open minded, and it's some of our culture, right? And I'd like to talk about this with you guys because this is what we do, right? This is about our culture. And one of the good stories I have for this is to help them heal. Is a lot of people find themselves in conflict with the family, especially substance abuse. Especially substance abuse. They come in conflict with the family. None of us will go do dope in front of our grandmother, unless your grandmother introduced you to dope, which is a sad case for some. The thing is, though, is I tell people all the time the La Llorona story. And they tell me, don't go by the ditch. She's going to drown you. She'll kill you. And I tell my daughter the La Llorona story. We were sitting there, we live behind a dry ditch in our backyard. You know, it's a little bereavement or something like that, a little way between the two backyards. And I tell her, look at that ditch, and you know you could swim and you could dive off the high board. And we go to the water parks and the wave machine goes back and forth and you never take a life jacket and you always need one. And she goes, yeah. I said, well, if there's rain clouds over there on the northwest, and it'll come, the water's going to come fast and it's going to be brown. You can't see the bottom of it. It's going to push one direction. If your foot gets caught, you don't have a life jacket, you're going to get tired. You could swim, but you can't swim against that current. If you hit your head, if you knock out. So playing in the ditch is deadly. And if you were to drown, it would devastate our family because we love you. So please don't play by the ditch. And to say it that complicated was the same thing my grandma was telling me when she said, stop, don't. And there's the translation conflict, is that my grandparents didn't know any other way. My mother didn't know any other way than try to scare me away from bad. And I think in today's generation, right, with this, how we pass it on is letting them know that they're loved. That even when they're telling us don't stop, and they're giving us this negative thing that we're hearing, it's love. And love is, no is one of the most powerful love words on the planet, bro. But nobody will use it in love. And so I get them, you know, I also tell people I work with that I never bought a book with their story in it. And I got that from you, because we all have a voice, right? We all have a
Yeah.
story, bro. And I buy a book. I paid $600 for books. It never told me about you. And then the 15 minutes of fame. Remember our 15 minutes of fame? If everybody got their 15 seconds of fame, bro, just be heard for 15 seconds, bro, we would heal each other just by listening. Just by listening, by letting you get it out and not telling you you can't talk like that in public and not telling you what not to do. Just let it out. And that's why I feel so free, especially in this forum with Nalba, that I get to talk about it. I talk about it anyways, but this is home to talk about it because this gave me my first voice. And I just let the people know I work with and I promote healing by giving them a voice.
I don't know. I'm a little breathless right now, Maxine. Maybe you need to pick up with the same question with Rocky so I can kind of compose myself, because I was like, that's just powerful. And I need to pass it on to you, Maxine, so you can keep with the same question with Rocky, and then I'll pick a question from the audience here in just a second.
Sorry, I was just backing up, Rocky. I want to make sure I ask you the right question and not get ahead of Fred over here. Yes, very powerful response, Eric. Thank you for that. So in the work that you do, Rocky, and you do work at all different types of level. I know that you do a lot of volunteer work within your community and the neighboring communities. We always talk about how I went to New Mexico Highlands University at the same campus you were teaching at while you were teaching there, but I never had a class by you, right? But the world brought us together somehow years later. But what are resources that you like to provide to peers so that they can maintain their recovery, so that they can find their path of recovery?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Thank you, Maxine, and Eric. Thank you for sharing your story, man. I think that's where the emotion that we are feeling and experiencing together through this even through the distance and through the Zoom, right? There's an emotional connection, I think, between us here. And I think that's what all New Mexicans to a degree feel, except those that may be experiencing addiction or discrimination or, feeling as though they're marginalized on the outer ends of our community. And I think one thing I've really seen with peers in recovery that I would recommend and just continue to talk about is step into who you were meant to be or to become, right? Try, as Eric said, forgiveness is, I think, a huge component to healing that a lot of times takes us as individuals a long time, especially if you're Latino, right? We could hold a grudge for 20 years, 30 years, man, and really never get over it. So that's something we have to work through as far as our cultural values, because I think being bullheaded and strong can also be some very protective factors that we have, but it can also be some potential risk factors, right? That don't allow us to engage, don't allow us to forgive and continue to push maybe the trauma or the things that we experience from our families in front of us, right? And always having to kind of lug that along with us. So step out of that and try to connect with people like Eric, like NALBA, like agencies that are committed to peer recovery. And I recently did some interviews at an agency I was working with, and I really felt humbled and honored to be able to allow in an interview peers to speak about their recovery and about their use openly, right? Rather than, as we all know, when we go into interviews, we put our best foot forward. We don't want to let anybody see our areas that we need improvement upon. But that was one of the really cool things. And I think that in New Mexico, there's such a huge peer movement. And shout out to Militia and to Nathan for the work that you all are doing statewide. I think we have to really allow our peers to be who they are. And for peers, once you step into that reality of who you are and who you want to become, the sky's the limit. I mean, for myself, I never in a million years would think that I would have a national platform to use my voice and to speak and to help other Latinos get to a point where they find their voice and they find their own path to recovery, even if it is separate or inclusive of the three ingredients that I kind of mentioned. I think once you find that and you find out who you are meant to be, as Eric mentioned, you get those opportunities to speak about it, and it gives you the shivers, right, or the chills, and it just gives you kind of this sense of, this is where I'm supposed to be. And some of us may have taken a long journey around and the scenic route to get where we are, right? But that's cool, man. That's okay too. Never sell yourself short. At whatever age that you feel like you want to connect to recovery, make that leap of faith, be vulnerable, and know that there's resources out there to help. I just want to make one plug, if you don't mind, Maxine, before I let the mic go, is, in terms of services, New Mexico, as many resources as we have, we still have some gaps in our continuum of care that we need to fill. And one of those is the project I'm working on in Northeast region of New Mexico, trying to get a detox center and inpatient facility in Las Vegas, New Mexico, which with the Mental Health Institute, Behavioral Health Institute, it's surprising that they've never had a detox or a residential inpatient long-term treatment facility there. So those are the opportunities I see for peers to connect to. And Central Family Health has a really strong peer recovery program that I'm very happy to say that I wrote the HRSA grant for, with a team approach to that, where we now support people in recovery to go on for higher ed, to go for their master's through a scholarship funded through HRSA and through El Centro Family Health, if you're hired into a peer recovery role with them. So those are just some of the things, Maxine, that I would mention, and take a leap of faith. There's support out there for you.
Before we move back to Fred, so I'll give you a little bit more time to recover from Eric's response, Fred. Thank you for what you said. So you said something at the beginning of your response here, Rocky, about how we're a collective community, especially in New Mexico, right? But that some people don't have that connectedness. That's not true for every single Latino or Latina or person, right? Not all of us have a family who can provide us with the recipe that you spoke about earlier, or the resources, to engage in some of the things that we want to heal. But I think that over the last year, this lack of connectedness, the additional isolation that the pandemic has brought about, has kind of exacerbated the situation for individuals in recovery, those who have connections before, who had connections before COVID and those who didn't. Can you talk about what some of these resources might look like for peers in a COVID world?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Maxine. I think the one resource that is an awesome resource for our state is the New Mexico Crisis and Access Line. And I think that's one way that folks can reach out to somebody 24/7 and actually get connected to somebody, whether it's a peer or it's a counselor that is obviously connected to that agency. And then I also think that, you know, Zoom is a really amazing tool. It can make people feel a little uncomfortable, but I know even for my own family, with our own recent experiences with grief and addiction, and having a son, a stepson who's in active addiction right now, you know, we have reached out to support groups online, and my wife is, you know, going on a support group online that she seems to really get a sense of community and connection with. And I know that that's not always comfortable for Latinos, right? Because we're just made that way. But I again, I think it goes back to vulnerability, right? Taking a chance, taking a leap of faith at times. For those that still don't want to do that, I think the opportunity to reach out to even our state Office of Peer Recovery and Engagement, right, is start to get your focus, rather than being isolated and alone, maybe start on doing the research and looking up, what do I need to do to become a peer in my community? What do I need to do? Because sometimes when we're not focused on ourselves, I've learned in not only being an addiction counselor and therapist for a lot of years as well, when we're not focused on ourselves, when we tend to look outward and see the possibility for us to connect or reconnect with community, I think those are the things that we should start to do. And then there's always faith-based organizations, right, that are doing different things. I know it's hard to practice, or to sometimes, especially with COVID, practice the way we normally would, like going to church or those sort of things. But there's still a lot of churches that will allow you to go in and pray and connect with spirituality that way. And then there's our natural traditional healers in our community, that I think are still, and when we talk about essential workers, right, they've been doing work all along this COVID throughout. And I think really helping our peers to think about these non-Western approaches to healing and connecting is a key aspect to not always looking at that from a fearful standpoint, but again, being vulnerable, putting yourself in a position to where you do reach out, maybe to things that you weren't traditionally reaching out to in the past.
Beautiful, thank you. And real quick, in the chat, Eric added to that, saying that he utilizes text, the phone, right? Pick up the phone, call somebody, touch base, reach out. So thank you for adding that, Eric. Fred, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you, Maxine. Well, there's a common theme that our listeners are talking about, and let me tell you what they're talking about. They're talking about our families. And so when we think about the natural support systems and the family support systems, and then the mainstream helping systems, when you think about how Latinos experience their mental health or mental illness or substance abuse, it affects the family, and vice versa. Things the family affects the person, and so it's very intertwined, because we know the family is one of our major cornerstones, right? Just as faith is, family is one of the other cornerstones. And so several questions have come up in the chat, and here's a question from one of our listeners, and I'm going to read this question out because it really gets at the heart of what are some of the cultural differences between Latinos and other groups, and because it's related to the family. The question's going to really kind of get at something that Eric already kind of opened up for us, but I'm going to put the question out here real quickly here because it really merits a little time. So our participant reminds us that she's been on these Pláticas, and she's been saying it's clear that the family is a very significant part of recovery. But here's the question. She wants to know your thoughts. So this is a question for both Rocky and for Eric. And she says she wants to know, what are your thoughts about other philosophies of caring for and about our loved ones with substance use disorders that say we, the family, should let them go and let them figure it out on their own because of all the pain and damage that they've caused a loved one. And because of that, there is something different about how Latinos are going to react to a loved one in their family with a mental health or substance abuse issue. And I'll now turn it over to you, gentlemen, because this is a very big question. And it leaves me with the impression I got from one of my own extended family members when she says, Fred, I will never abandon my grandson, despite the pain, the suffering that the family has experienced, because he's experiencing the pain and suffering right along with us. And so, Eric, big question about the family's experience, and what's your perspective about the family?
I think that's the misperception, right? Again, no is one of the most loving words you can say to somebody. Because I wouldn't let my daughter stick her finger in a socket. I wouldn't let her take a toaster into the bathtub, you know. And so we go to them extremes just to make people think. The philosophy of saying no, of not going down that journey with them is yeah, it's hard in our community, right? Because it's family, but it's also them things that Rocky touched on, right? It's a blessing and a curse. It's a double-edged sword. You know what I mean? Because I won't let you go down that path because I'll go down that path with you. But that doesn't make no sense. There's two people, if there's one person in a hole, I don't jump in the hole to help them get out, bro. It doesn't make no sense. And I tell grandmothers all the time about their Hito, who's 45 years old, and he's sitting in my office. And I tell the grandmother, I say, how long have you been shooting dope? And she goes, I've never shot dope. And I tell them, why are you out there delivering TVs at 2 o'clock in the morning then? And it gets them to think. And then we bring in the spiritual realm, and I'm going to bring up some spiritual stuff. I hope I don't offend anybody. But the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son in the Bible, I tell them because they're all Bible believers, they're all God believers. And especially in our community, I've rearranged the story that the father in the story is not the heavenly father. What if it's you? God showed us what to do. We give them the money, we give them what's theirs, we let them go do what they do. I don't stop. I don't leave the house. I don't go chase them. I don't go running after them. I don't go with them into the bad places. I sit at home. I work. I continue to do what I do, and they'll come back, bro. It's a very powerful story, right? But we won't look at it like that sometimes. But it's already given to us. It's in books that were written 2,000 years ago, bro. You give them their stuff, you let them go make their way and come back. But it's hard to do, like for my mother, who told me, no, cuidado, don't, stop. And I never got dirty until I was 15 years old, bro. I was all clean cut till hair was always parted in the same direction. I never even let the dust hit me, bro. Bueno, that's it.
Yeah, yeah, awesome, Eric. Yeah, the spirituality aspect of it is very significant because it's one of those cornerstones in our life, right? About what we believe in and the things that actually do bring us comfort from all the pain and suffering that is around us or affecting us. Rocky, say something about the role of the family because clearly the live Facebook audience is picking up that the role of the Latino family is very significant. And I'll end with this. Because all the comments and questions coming in, they're coming in really fast, is after today, I'd encourage both of you to go back into the Facebook recorded version of today's Platica and send back comments to the questions that were raised today. because clearly folks want to hear from you about a number of things. But let's now going back to the family. What more can you say or add about the significance of the family's support as it relates to their loved ones who are experiencing a substance abuse disorder or even some mental health condition?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Fred. I think it's very easy for me to kind of leap into this Western approach and substance abuse and addiction and, set boundaries and all those things. But I think there has to be kind of a hybrid model, if you will. I agree completely with Eric. I think no is one of the best learning tools that there are out there, especially when someone is in active addiction. And I'm kind of coming from that reference. But even when someone is struggling with mental health and unwilling to address some of those issues also, right? And it's affecting the family at a bigger level. I think that we have to kind of look at it through the lens of, and I lovingly created, I don't know that I created or coined the term, but I talk a lot about it, especially in my addiction training piece that I do is a lot of our families suffer from mijito syndrome, right? Where pobrecito, mijito, and all those things. And granted, that's a part of cariño and that's a part of love. And at the same time, those can also be very detrimental to the long-term success of a young man. And I'm using a man in this point as a reference, but even with females, right? In whatever capacity we set that mijita syndrome up, I think we have to be very cautious that we are setting expectations and boundaries. And with that said, still showing love and caring for the individual, but that can also be done from a distance. If that individual is creating chaos within the family, it's one thing to still accept that and allow that chaos to impact other members of the family, but it's another thing to try to address it and say, we love you so much that these are the resources and tools that we're trying to give to you. Because we know that really if a young man is unable to deal with some of the issues that they are experiencing mental health, addiction-wise at a familial level, that at the very basis, long-term relationships are going to be hard for them to really establish. And I think in real life, as all of us know, we have to hear no every now and then. It keeps our ego in check and it keeps us in a position where we don't always get our needs met immediately, immediate gratification. So being able to say no to somebody, I think is an expression of, I love you enough that I'm setting a healthy boundary, not only for you, but for myself and for our larger, more extended family as well. So I think there has to be a blend or a hybrid of models, Fred. I think that they're always, with any model that you choose, and I know Fred and Maxine and Eric as well knows this, with any evidence-based model, not many models are created in the Northeast region or Southwest region of the United States in Northern New Mexico, right? Many models are created in different parts of the world and country. So we always have to adapt and make those models fit with our local cultural values and familial values, so that the model will then be more effective in serving our population. But so I kind of gave you both, I think, the touchy-feely family kind of view, but also, right, when we talk about science and knowing about evidence-based and best practices, I think it's really merging those two together and creating a model that's most effective. And Eric, I think, has really expressed that in the model he's evolving in at a New Awakening and at a Rio Rancho. So,
Hey, I got something real quick to say, because there's been me and Rocky, right? I know Mr. Rocky, and Mr. Rocky was at one of the trainings when I presented there with JR Romero. And it's this thing about resources, right? We don't talk like that, and it's a shame that we don't. Our families might use certain words, certain terminologies, the way we look at stuff, but the youth, they're not on that level. I mean, one of the things that, and people might think I'm a braggart or something, but I'm just confident that it's the old school, reach one, teach one. Reach one, teach one. Because I got more referrals from the penitentiary and the dope houses than I do from CYFD. because people's lives are changing. And once you change a life, right? Once somebody turns it around, they get 7 years of recovery, like some of my clients, 10 years of recovery. Then people will come and ask me for help down the road. Their brother got help. So, it's that reach one, teach one, and that's the resource, right? But sometimes the resources ain't sought after. And to me, the question is, how do the resource providers reach out to the community? Because see, that's it, right? And I've been on calls nationwide where the University of Maryland takes an RV with doctors and the homeboys driving the bus, the recovered dudes driving the bus that's getting the education. And he goes in the neighborhood because without him, you're not getting in the neighborhood. And that's more of the stuff, right? And that brings together the family. And I'm also a firm believer that sometimes water's thicker than blood because they don't talk to me in the usual manner that the family talks to me in. And the family, I can reconcile that, but there's always that fear. And if there's fear there, there's a lack of faith. And if there's a lack of faith, there's little hope to recovery.
Wow. Yeah. Powerful, gentlemen. Just really powerful. And all I could say, Maxine, if it were up to you, would you want this plática to keep going on and going on? Because it's like it's so rich between what Eric and Rocky are sharing and the questions people are asking. So if it was up to you, would you want to do this longer?
Yeah, we always get to an hour is never enough, especially for this topic, right? And especially because we work with folks, we have the pleasure of calling, individuals like Eric and Rocky, our peers, our colleagues, our friends, our familia, that you're so willing to be open, to talk about things, to say things that isn't gonna feel good to everybody, but it's the right thing to say. So in your own way, you're saying no, there is an issue with this. I love the metaphors. I love how Eric said, well, I wouldn't let my daughter put her finger in a socket. So why are we letting other family members do X, Y, or Z? Or for Rocky to say, it's one thing to support somebody to do these, through their recovery or through their addiction, but enabling them also harms the rest of the family because it sends a message about what that looks like. And I think both of you talked about this hybrid model, and the truth is that we do live in a world that very does much put value on a Western medical model of approaching things. And so we're experiencing it, even if it's not the most comfortable thing for us. So we have to find kind of this middle ground of using what we know works in recovery, but tailoring it to each family. Somebody in the audience said, we meet people where they are at, not where we don't say, oh, you come to the other side of the street and then we can start working on your recovery. We cross the street. We don't care if there's traffic. We don't care if our pozole is ready. We cross the street and we meet them where they're at. So short answer, Fred, absolutely. I think we need about 2 to 3 hours to
I
really
know.
get into the meat of this. But I just want to say, gentlemen, not only the audience, like the numbers, but the engagement level during this session has been phenomenal. And it's really because the two of you were able to put forward this recipe of cariño, of fe, and vulnerability so that other people have a safe space to ask questions, to share their experiences. And so thank you for that. What a gift over the last hour.
That's right. Yeah, we're already at 1 minute before we have to end, and I'm saying to myself, oh my gosh, there was so many comments. I mean, Adela from Nevada sent us a message. We didn't get to her question. Uh, we have Adan, Carmen, Clarissa, Elaine. The list is going on. So, gentlemen, after today's recorded version, let's all go back into Facebook and reply to folks, because part of that is this message is going to be repeated this 1 hour as many times as we can possibly share it. So Nalba's excited that you accepted being part of this Plática, and who better than a couple of colleagues who I greatly admire. Eric, your path, and for me, is very special. As you know, you and I have a special connection given that your road to recovery interfaced with my family's experience. And so it's telling about how we support each other, right? We're only 3 degrees of separated from each other somehow. And that's important. And that's part of the extended family or the New Mexico family or the national family, because I have Latino family members across the country and other countries too. But I can't say enough to thank you today, but we certainly offer you our great, deep appreciation for your participation today, your inspiration, your honesty, and how was it said? You told the truth today, and how powerful is that? And so we're going to have to wrap up because we just weren't able to continue beyond the hour as we would have liked, but we understand that I did have someone say, please keep these going. So just know that that is going to be our plan at least through June, and we're going to continue to really tap into your expertise and your involvement with Tenemos Voz, because we all have a voice, and this is the venue, this is the vehicle for doing this, because Latinos absolutely greatly appreciate information, education, and inspiration. It's the way we help take care of each other. So we're going to conclude today's session. And so those of you in the live Facebook chat, thank you for your comments, your questions. We're going to have to get back to you to make sure we get to so many of those. They were coming in so fast that I couldn't keep the revolving door from stopping, so I just kept coming in. So Eric, Rocky, and Maxine, to the three of you, such a
Thank you
wonderful
all.
plática. Gracias. We'll stay informed and stay in touch. Adios. Thank you all.
Gracias.
Adios.